So the key points of masculinity are setting structure and routine. Yet the world conditions men to go out and fetch their dreams. This act is inherently feminine, and she wants to know what my relationship with my own masculinity um, is. Basically, looking through that lens, right? And I'm gonna go ahead and respond. Um, I would have to heavily agree that the key points of masculinity are indeed setting structure and routine. I feel like that is the baseline to a man's existence, right? Having a foundation, having principles, having direction, right? I feel like that's what makes a man a man. Um, uh, Asia also makes the claim that the world conditions men to go out and fetch their dreams, and I would also have to agree with that. Um, whether it's men or women or whatever, I would say men are mostly goal driven, right? We always want something. I wouldn't say that women are not goal driven, but I could say that the goals that men set for themselves tend to be um, aligned more with principle. I could say that, and what I mean by that is like um, niggas are gonna do shit that makes them feel purposeful, you know? And I feel like that's just natural, right? We want to feel like we matter to somebody, if it's anybody, you know? Um, and, I don't feel like there's necessarily anything wrong with that, but what comes first or what should come first is like, nigga, do you matter to yourself? You feel me? Because I feel like a lot of men are natural caretakers, right? We want to make sure everybody is straight. We want to make sure the kids are straight. We want to make sure the house is straight. We want to make sure that the pets are straight. You know what I mean? We want to make sure grandma's straight, grandpa's straight. But, I noticed that it just becomes a pattern of like, nigga, who gonna make sure I'm straight? And I feel like that's almost the that's almost like the downfall of most men, right? We catch this let's make sure everybody's straight attitude, and then when it's time for the energy to get reciprocated, and we realize that nigga, even though I just took care of everybody else, nobody's turning around and like, you know what, let me make sure this nigga is good here. Let me make sure this nigga is good here. Let me make sure this nigga not worried about this. I find that is hardly ever something that happens on like a normal basis with most men. I wouldn't say it never happens or that nobody does it, but like most men I encounter, and even with myself, like that's the reality, you know? So, you know, I would say, I would agree, you know what I mean, that the world does condition men to go out and fetch their dreams because we're really focused on trying to provide. We're trying to go and get and gather some type of resource, whether it be financial, whether it be educational. We're trying to become valuable, but most of the time we're trying to become valuable, it is not for us, you know? And I feel like that's the toxic part of that ideology of fetching, you know? I feel like if you're gonna chase something, and I don't want to sound selfish when I say it, but nigga, do it for you, right? Because put it like this, I think of man as like a generator, right? And we're powered by principle. We're powered by morality. We're powered by family structure. We're powered by love. You know, um, when a man loses his family structure, when a nigga loses his wife, his kids, when a nigga loses his money, um, when everything external from the man brings doubt upon the man, that's when men are destroyed. That's when men lose motivation. And so I don't want to sound like I'm being selfish when I say, nigga, do it for you, because in order for you to have a power source to generate from, you are dependent on external factors, right? And I don't feel like that is a sufficient way to go about manhood. I feel like it's a cop-out. I feel like it's weak. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm doing this for you, woody wop. And that's how you get men out here that end up doing bad things to their family when shit goes wrong. You know what I mean? Because they do all this stuff to uphold their family, and when their family betrays them, that's when they want to start killing people. That's when they want to start putting their hands on women. You know what I mean? I feel like it's a weak way to go about life, because you're too deep. So let me get this right. So you want everybody to depend on you as a man, right? You want to provide for all these people and have all these people in a position to depend on you as a man. But you, one second. You want all these people to depend on you as a man in order for you to have some type of function, some type of duty and purpose to fulfill. But like, you're dependent on them being in a position to depend on you in the first place. You know what I mean? Or you're depending on them to love you in a way to where you can feel like, okay, I'm doing this for somebody that I love or that loves me and that looks up to me. You know what I mean? But it's like, it gets to a point to where once you lose that, you have no more foundation to provide for self. And so men naturally become self-sabotaging. Now you're gaining weight. Now you're quitting your job. Now you're depressed. You're sitting in the house a lot. Now you want to, delete yourself. Now you want to, and it's like, it's just not sufficient. It's not smart. It's not a smart thing to do. It's not an efficient thing to do. I feel like a divine masculine man is his own powerhouse. External factors have to be set aside, or you have to be willing and able to set aside external factors, which means that you have to be able to look at the closest people to you, the ones that you love the most, and be like, what would I be doing if you weren't here? This is not a selfish mindset, y'all. This is not a negative mindset. To be able to look at the people around you and picture yourself in a scenario where they were not in the picture. That's when you start to realize like what you really care about, the things that you really want to be doing in life. What your principles are, outside of, family. Like what if you were just to stand alone as a man? Just alone, and that's how you prepare yourself for these futuristic events of you being alone, is to put yourself in that space beforehand, right? To isolate yourself, to isolate your mind, to isolate your ideology, to be able to like, okay, I look at things different than everybody else, and I'm fine with that. To be able to do that, to be able to look in the mirror, to be able to address and hold yourself accountable for things that, you feel like you could have did different. To forgive yourself for things that you may have done, you may feel it as if you have done wrong. These are the things that build up a divine masculine energy. And once you become self-embracing, once you become unconditional loving, you know what I mean? Infinite understanding of self, you become your own powerhouse, right? And so how this comes back to, the world conditioning men to go out and fetch, it's natural for men to want to chase. We get caught up and lost in our goals so much as men because guess what? A lot of things that we have to do take a lot of time investment. And so when we're not working towards our goals, we find other things to make up the time, because guess what? We want to be there already. Like there might be something that's 5 years in the future, but we might just start ignoring small things about ourselves and small things about life and just focusing on that 5 years from now, this is what I'm going to be doing. I don't really care about that, or I don't really care about that, or this is what you get goal driven, but you also forget about how to love your woman properly. You forget about how to love your kids properly. You forget about how to love yourself properly. And so this is what I'm trying to tell people. There's a difference between getting lost in the chase, thinking that that is being goal driven and that's good, and being self motivated, you know, aligned with self, present with self, you know, like, nigga, be a little bit more selfish with your energy and you might find a lot more happiness. And you can use that happiness to help build a better foundation for yourself, to keep a infinite powerhouse of energy and confidence and motivation for yourself. That way you can provide for others effectively and efficiently and more, you know what I mean? More often than not, right? So she asked, what is my relationship with my own masculinity looking through this lens? Well, kind of what I've been saying so far. You know what I mean? Just aligning with myself, locking in with myself. Everything I've said so far, I highly resonate with because I done been through it. I done got so lost in my goals before that I forgot how to love properly because I'm too busy trying to provide. I'm too busy trying to do a million different things to ensure that I have a great financial future that I forget to show up for myself, because I'm too focused on my goals, right? I don't think anything else matters. Like, as long as I'm making money, as long as I'm doing this, and that, I'm straight, right? As long as my family's eating, I'm straight. As long as my bills are paid, I'm straight. But there's so many little things that get glossed over that it becomes insufficient and ineffective, right? By the time you do reach your goal, you're not even going to be the same nigga. You're not even going to have the same type of motivation you had to reach your goal by the time you get to the end goal. You know what I mean? By the time you get to the end of the race, you're going to be fucking exhausted and tired. You can be like, nigga, why am I even running this shit in the first place? You're going to damn near forget. And so that's why it's important to slow down, right? Be present with self, lock in with self and show up for self. And there's also another thing I wanted to add in there, right? This is what I wanted to add in. Basically, when it comes to achieving a goal, you don't necessarily always want to be in the chase of it, right? When it comes to bringing about a certain end result that you want, right? You have to, not everything is going to require a linear path of growth. It's not gonna be effective to head at certain goals straight on. Sometimes you have to sacrifice things. You have to sacrifice time. You have to sacrifice relationships. You have to do things out of the ordinary, or some things that you don't want to do to reach that goal. Everything is not going to be as easy as just straightforward. You're going to have relationship problems. You're going to have money problems. You're going to have motivational problems. You're going to have all these different issues that you must address before you can get to that goal. So that's why I say it's important to slow down, because if you get too lost in the chase, by the time you think that you're catching up to whatever it is that you're chasing, it's like an illusion. It's like the closer you get, the actual further away from the goal you're actually getting, And I don't mean that literally. I mean that kind of metaphorically. Like you might think that you want this big old house, and because at the time of you trying to manifest that big ass house, that nice ass house, you're thinking of, like, subconsciously, you're already tacking on the loving family unit that you already have in your small house, But if you get too lost in trying to get the big ass house, and you're chasing, and you're working all this overtime, you're not spending as much time with your family and kids, in turn, you can start creating small little ripple effects of relationship issues, life work balance issues. You know what I mean? Thus, you're subconsciously manifesting an alternate reality of you in that house alone. You know what I mean? Because you're the only one who's envisioning that every single day. It's not like a group manifestation, right? Because all the kids see and all the wife sees is just what we have right now, and being effective and taking care of what we have at the moment, right? Like that's important to other people. Whereas I'm not saying it's not important to you, but it gets, you know, it gets set to the side because you're like, I need to go get this, right? And so when it comes to achieving goals, you cannot gloss over the little things. You have to slow down and you have to be present with self and you have to be present with everything else that is included, even if you're not thinking about it, right? Nigga, that's why meditation is important. You have to think about every aspect of what it is you're manifesting so that way you can get to where you're trying to go properly, right? And that's I would say that is somewhat of my method of manifestation. Not everything you have to, you know, just achieve on a linear path. That's just not efficient in my eyes, right? Another thing is the chase in general. Like me personally, I don't like to chase my goals, right? I like to have my manifestations brought to me. And how do you do that? Well, I once heard a good analogy from a wise man that like when you go fishing, you don't get out and just jump in the water and chase the fish and grab it, right? When you're fishing, right, you have a fishing pole and you have bait on the end of the hook, right? And you're baiting the fish to draw it to you. So that way, when it's close enough, all you have to do is reel it in. And so what I'm saying, what the analogy is that, you know, if you treat all your goals and all your dreams as if you were fishing, then, you know, when you're fishing, what are you doing? You're literally setting the conditions for something to be brought to you, right? The chase is just the beginning. You know, the drive to wherever you're going to the water to go fish, that's just the beginning. You know, you're not going to jump out the car and go chase the fish. No, you're going to get into a reasonable area, you know, a feasible area to go get a fish. But you're not going to chase the fish once it's super close to you. No, you're going to bait it out. You're going to draw it to you. You're going to set the conditions to draw the fish closer and closer and closer until the fish is now in your possession, right? And so what do I do when I want to achieve something? I first envision myself with whatever it is that I want. Like I picture myself with it already. I'm in understanding and acceptance of a reality where it is already mine, and what type of person I would be if I had this goal achieved already. You know, what type of attitude would I have every day? What type of way out, how I would spend my money, or like how I would treat people, or, you know, and once I align myself entirely with who I envision that person to be, that's whenever the achieving a goal becomes a lot more easy. It becomes it becomes almost as if there was no chase at all, right? Like there's a little bit of a chase, but it's mostly mental. It's not even really physical. And most of the physical chasing, you know what I mean, is it's not even to the point to where I could compare it to, like I said, like if I can compare it to a linear path of a goal achievement, you know what I mean? Like linear path, you're at one place and then you just go straight to the other place, right? I feel like I'm more of a single point. Like if you were looking at a graph chart, right? I'm not looking at a straight line. I'm not looking at a linear path. I'm not even looking at an exponential path necessarily. I feel like if I was just a fine single point on the board, I wouldn't even have to do any movement, right? Everything for me is internal. Not as much physical action, mostly mental action, mental manifestation, mental thoughts, you know what I mean? Meditation sessions, you know, being present with self. You know, that's basically how I manifest, you know. And so just yeah, if I could take any key points from this, nigga, be a little bit more selfish. become your own fucking powerhouse, that's going to help you provide for others, and it's going to be more healthy for you at the end of the day, cuz guess what? You're not constantly running out of energy. You're not running out of battery cuz you're depending on other people to love and depend on you for you to be sufficient and effective. You know what I mean? So it's like you work a little bit different when it comes to the divine masculine. You know, you're not on the same board. You're not on the same, you know, category. You're not in the same branch as other men. You know, you have a firm understanding of self, and that just naturally attracts your goals and your manifestations to you more easily, because nigga, you got a clear head, you got clear intentions. You know, you're holding yourself accountable. You are the discipline in your life. You know, so yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap that up with that.